It all begins in the year 2038 at Enko High School, where peace does not last very long because young Chin En decided to take his classic nap right in the middle of class once again. The teacher gets completely furious since there are only 7 days left until final exams and the boy is sleeping even through mock tests. With that, the instructor walks right up, pouring out all of his pent-up rage while getting ready to deliver a massive lecture. But the boy's audacity is unmatched since he stays sound asleep and even blows a drool bubble right in the face of danger. This prota really is a master of sleeping anywhere. Seeing that he is totally ignored, the teacher loses what little patience he had left and decides to handle things the hard way. The man simply activates a strange power and begins charging energy into his arms in a terrifying way to wake up the student. He unleashes a devastating strike, sending Chin En flying through the air with a force that is definitely against school policy. The boy goes sliding down the hallway like a sack of potatoes, while the other students dive out of the way to avoid getting hit. The sleepy teen's flight only comes to a stop when he heads straight into a massive testing machine sitting in the middle of the corridor. The impact is so intense that Chin En crashes hard into the device, creating a deafening crash that startles everyone nearby. At that very moment, the machine's display begins calculating the force of the hit and shows an absurd number on the holographic screen. The other students are left in shock, seeing that the damage scored over 200 points while the poor boy remains knocked out cold. Everyone starts talking about how ridiculously strong their teacher is and how having that kind of power would make getting into any college a breeze. They recall that all the teachers here are professional martial artists, while the students are still trying to become mere apprentices. Putting the gossip aside, the class begins walking over to see if poor Chin En is still breathing after a hit like that. One classmate mentions that he has been sleeping way too much lately and might be dealing with a serious health issue. But the teacher does not want to hear any excuses and demands that as soon as the slacker wakes up, he must run 100 laps around the track. Suddenly, 2 students walk over. They stop right beside Chin En's body and begin glaring down at him with pure mockery and superiority. The guy laughs at the whole scene, claiming Chin En is just playing dead because he knew he would embarrass himself on today's test. To further humiliate the former class leader, the bully delivers a powerful kick to the exact same testing machine, showing everyone who runs the place now. The unprovoked display of strength leaves the rest of the class thoroughly impressed by the destructive power of that sudden kick. The machine reveals that he managed to score over 130 points, making everyone start fawning over the classroom's new favorite. The gossip spreads fast, and some recall that Chin En never beat that score, which is why he was replaced by his ex's new boyfriend. The rich kid brags about his expensive supplements and private tutors while planning to get into the top academy alongside the girl. The ex-girlfriend glances back with cold disdain, saying it is high time Chin En faces the harsh reality of their world. With that, the couple simply turns their backs and walks away, leaving the prota lying there as if he were nothing at all. The hallway slowly empties out, and the boy remains left behind on the cold floor while the rest of the class moves on with their day. Suddenly, a drop of water falls right on Chin En's face, making him open his eyes in shock. The boy gets up quickly in a dark, filthy place, realizing he is no longer in the comfortable hallway of his school. He begins to feel an agonizing pain throughout his body and realizes this is far too real to just be a silly daydream. Looking down at his own shoulder, he finds a terrible infected wound sitting in the exact same spot as before. This only confirms his worst suspicion regarding his bizarre connection to this horrifying place. Looking around, he spots a cracked monitor and a dusty window, realizing his theories were spot on from the start. The young man lets out a frustrated sigh upon realizing he was pulled right back into this run-down, ruined setting he hates. So much he reflects on how he had been dreaming about this parallel world for an entire week. But the pain on his skin proves this is no fantasy. Even while staggering and feeling physically drained, the boy forces himself to stand up and figure out what he needs to do to survive. He reaches out and grabs a heavy metal pipe from the floor, knowing that walking around unarmed here is asking to become monster chow. With the makeshift weapon in hand, the young man walks slowly toward the window to check out the situation outside. The prota wonders where on earth he just ended up. Looking out, he sees a city completely devastated by flames with massive hordes of creatures roaming the ruined streets. Bizarre, deformed zombies wander hungrily through the rubble of destroyed buildings, making it crystal clear that humanity here is long gone. The boy is horrified to realize the planet looks like it came straight out of a ruthless post-apocalyptic video game. He recalls that on his last visit he nearly starved, and while searching for food, he ended up getting attacked by a monster that tore open his shoulder. The only way to escape this nightmare and return to the real world was by falling asleep, but keeping his eyes open. Here is a real struggle. Worst of all, eating in the real world does not satisfy his hunger here, so he always wakes up in this wasteland totally starving. With his stomach painfully growling, the boy realizes he is at his limit and could pass out from malnutrition at any second. Searching through his few belongings, he celebrates finding a dry biscuit that might be his only temporary lifesaver right now. But the worst part is that the weaker and more injured his body gets in this apocalyptic world, the weaker he also wakes up in real life. Chinen realizes that if he ends up perishing in this monster-filled wasteland, his real-world body will probably meet its end too. Because of this, the boy decides to swallow his pride and eat his only dry biscuit to make sure he has the stamina to keep fighting. With the iron pipe in hand, he walks cautiously toward the door, knowing that any small noise could seal his fate. The young man knows full well that today is the day to take down the monster blocking the hallway, since he needs to get out and find food. It is a do-or-die situation, and the boy mentally braces himself before opening the door. Spotting the distracted creature facing away at the end of the hallway, he realizes this is the perfect opening to launch a sneak attack. He charges at the target with all the speed he can muster, gripping his makeshift weapon tightly to land the blow. But the monster notices the approach and whips around quickly. Chinen shows off impressive reflexes by dodging the incoming strike. The creature's hand grazes right past his face, but he manages to stay completely locked in to counterattack the moment an opening appears. Capitalizing on the clean dodge, the boy quickly repositions right behind the opponent, prepping a strike with all the strength he has left. He takes an incredible leap, channeling a massive amount of energy into the metal pipe to land a direct hit on the head of that nasty creature. The strike lands with full power, crushing the enemy's skull. After securing the win, the young man is completely drained and takes a deep breath, while a holographic screen shows his mind. Power is holding strong. He looks down at the defeated creature at his feet and finally manages to relax a bit, knowing he bought himself some time to survive. The young man is surprised because the fight went way smoother than expected, making him think passing the academy test would be easy with this power. But suddenly, he spots something glowing inside the monster's remains and bends down to pick up a mysterious green crystal hidden inside. Holding the stone, he catches a very pleasant, sweet scent and notices a mysterious, powerful energy radiating straight from the object. The scent is so tempting that the boy's own body begins craving that energy, prompting him to bring the crystal toward his mouth. Without thinking twice, he ends up swallowing the entire gem and panics as the object bizarrely slides down his throat. At that very moment, an unbearable burning sensation spreads through his veins, making the boy cry out in pain from the transformation. He falls to his knees, panting as the mysterious energy finally starts to balance out inside his body in a surprising way. To his complete amazement, his entire body warms up, and that nasty infected wound on his shoulder heals up completely in mere seconds. Feeling an absurd amount of strength surging through his veins, he realizes his power level shot up drastically after absorbing the stone's energy. Just then, a green mist begins floating around the boy, who gets confused, seeing a small glow appear right in the palm of his right hand. The light takes the shape of a floating cube, and he realizes he just unlocked a very rare portable spatial storage ability. He instantly grasps how to use that power and notes that the inside of his new pocket dimension measures exactly 1 cubic meter. But the boy's stomach starts growling loudly because the power boost caused his energy consumption to spike, leaving the poor guy even hungrier. The young man knows he needs to find food quickly, so he does not starve, but that ruined building has already been thoroughly looted and sits empty. As he walks dejectedly through the dark corridor, he spots a small shine on the cold floor and decides to walk over to check it out. Picking up the item, he realizes it is a gold ring, but remembers that jewelry and wealth are completely useless in an apocalypse. Feeling discouraged, he figures there is zero use for that ring since there is no one around to buy it or trade it for food. But suddenly, a brilliant idea crosses the boy's mind, and his eyes widen as he realizes a possibility that could change his entire path. He looks over at the monster's remains on the floor and begins crafting a master plan to use his new spatial power to his advantage. The boy realizes that if he can take that valuable ring back to the real world, he will be able to sell it for an absolute fortune. Wasting no time, he activates his spatial ability and stores the gold ring inside the glowing green cube to run the ultimate test. Shortly after, exhaustion sets in, and he ends up waking back up at school, stretching his arm out along the hallway floor in dramatic fashion. Still, lying down, the Prota decides to test his power in the real world and summons the green cube, praying that it works. To his sheer delight, the gold ring simply slips through the portal and drops right into the palm of his hand in the real world without a hitch. Chinen's eyes light up with pure excitement upon seeing that his crazy plan worked and that he truly managed to beat the system. He sits up quickly on the school floor, clutching the valuable object tightly while trying to process that unbelievable achievement. The boy can barely hold back the grin on his face upon realizing he was able to move physical treasure from one dimension straight into another. With the ring in hand, he realizes his spatial storage is the ultimate tool to get rich quick without breaking a sweat. Filled with infectious joy, he pulls off an acrobatic leap right in the middle of the hallway, proving he got all his stamina back. The young man dashes to the window, realizing that the ring, considered pure junk in the apocalypse, is about to turn into cold, hard cash here. He hops out of the school window toward the street, celebrating loudly and shouting for everyone to hear that he is finally going to be loaded. The boy lands in style on the sidewalk and starts running full speed toward the nearest shopping district. He keeps sprinting down the street with a wild grin on his face while passing drivers and pedestrians think he has totally lost his mind. The boy finally arrives in front of a high-end pawn and trade shop. He walks into the business full of confidence and presents the jewelry to the appraiser, asking him to check the true value of that ring. The appraiser inspects the gold ring carefully and points out that although the metal is light, the embedded diamond carries insane value. The expert offers 350,000 yen for the piece, and the Prota nearly falls over hearing that unbelievable sum of money. Playing it cool, the boy says he will think on it a bit just to keep his leverage while planning to check rates at other shops. The moment he steps outside, the young man cannot contain his excitement and begins shouting in the middle of the street, completely amazed by his stroke of luck. After closing the deal, the boy walks out of the shop, sporting a massive grin, while the clerk bids him farewell with the utmost politeness. He glances at his phone screen and watches his bank balance. Instantly jumped to an impressive 400,000 yen, the Prota starts laughing with pure joy like a total maniac for making so much money off a piece of jewelry that was treated like trash in the ruined world. He thinks to himself that he never imagined seeing this much cash and that becoming rich and set for life overnight is the best feeling in the world. With his finances completely sorted out and no bills to stress over, the boy realizes the time has finally come to fulfill his biggest craving. The young man's plan now is to take his massive newfound fortune, head straight to the city's top restaurant row, and eat until he drops. He strolls strolls happily through the busy city streets at night, taking in the glowing neon signs and picking out the perfect spot for his feast. Chin-en throws his arms open in the middle of the food plaza, proudly declaring that today is the day he eats whatever he wants without holding back. He starts ordering nearly the entire restaurant menu, including roast meats and dozens of Chinese crepes, without caring about the final bill. Short while later, the prota shows up completely stuffed with his cheeks packed full from devouring all the treats he bought without restraint. Meanwhile, his ex-girlfriend and the new class representative step out of a fancy restaurant, commenting on how good the service was there. The rich kid quickly spots the boy eating like there is no tomorrow and begins mocking him, calling him a pig in an arrogant, unpleasant tone. The girl gets totally annoyed seeing her ex-boyfriend nearby and complains that running into that poor guy is nothing but bad luck. Without giving a single thought to those two fools, the prota simply brushes off their taunts and calmly orders more food to go. The bully walks over to start trouble, saying that street food is pathetic and that quality meat is just a distant dream for someone broke. He pulls a vial of premium nutrient solution from his pocket, bragging that a single bottle costs 2,000 yen, which equals his rival's yearly food budget. To further embarrass the prota, the rich kid tosses one of the pricey vials to his new girlfriend, who catches the gift with a smug smile. The rich boy keeps rubbing it in, saying that top-tier supplements are far out of Chin-en's league, while the young man just keeps eating. The ex-girlfriend pretends to be modest while holding the golden vial, thinking to herself that she is definitely not dating the rich guy, just for his cash. She speaks up, saying she needs to get stronger to keep up, with his pace leaving the prota disgusted by that cheesy couple. The wealthy guy decides to head over to a nearby supplement shop to pick up more expensive vials to prep for the major academy exams. Chin-en notices the direction the couple is heading and figures he might as well drop by the same shop to do some quick shopping of his own. The couple gets completely caught off guard, noticing the prota walked into the store right behind them, wondering what that broke guy is doing there. The luxury shop clerk welcomes the boy with top-tier politeness, while he calmly mentions he is interested in picking up some nutrient solutions. The couple takes in the gorgeous upscale store with its high ceiling and massive chandelier, laughing at Chin-en's nerve for trying to buy anything there. The rich kid cannot hold back a mocking laugh upon hearing the boy and asks sarcastically if he actually has the cash for that. The saleswoman ignores the laughter and explains that the store carries 3 tiers of nutrients ranging from 1,000 to 3,000 yuan depending on quality. She adds that the pricier vials are far more effective for training and warmly asks which option the boy would like to get. The rich kid starts laughing out loud, mocking Chin-en and saying that even if he spent his life savings, he could barely afford the cheapest bottle. The ex-girlfriend joins in on the teasing warning that he needs at least 3 bottles to see results and that he should just give up. Already, she shoots the young man a cold look of disdain, telling him to leave, since this upscale shop is definitely no place for someone like him. The prota simply walks right past her without paying her any mind, making the girl throw a fit, screaming at him not to touch her. The rich kid steps in holding his girlfriend back and starts yelling across the store, demanding to know what Chin-en thinks he is doing with her, tired of the whole circus. The prota glances back with a look of absolute boredom and coldly tells the couple to back off. He turns to the saleswoman and says that since he is already here, he might as well buy the most potent and expensive supplements in stock. In an extremely casual, direct manner, the boy asks for 100 bottles of the best nutrient solution, leaving the clerk completely stunned and speechless. The employee nearly chokes, confirming the order of 100 bottles, which totals a whopping 300,000 yuan, while the couple screams that it is a lie. The rich kid starts laughing nervously, claiming a broke guy living in public housing is just lying and embarrassing himself trying to act cool. The ex-girlfriend scoffs in disgust, saying she broke up with him because she thought he was an honest guy, but now he turned out to be a pathetic liar. Ignoring the chatter, the boy asks if the store has enough stock and lets the clerk know he will be paying with his debit card. The employee holds out the card reader, still trembling, and the prota swipes his custom card with effortless swagger that anyone would envy. The transaction of 300,000 yuan clears, instantly leaving the arrogant couple standing there with their jaws on the floor. The other store staff begin gathering around the boy, offering free home delivery and a special perk for his new premium membership. The rich kid breaks into a cold sweat, unable to figure out where his classmate got so much money, wondering if he was secretly filthy rich the whole time. Trying to play it off, the rich boy claims Chin-en must have gotten the cash through shady means, and that they should just leave to train with their private tutor. The ex-girlfriend agrees with a nervous laugh, saying they will ace the martial arts academy exams as they rush out looking like two startled fools. Late at night, back in the humble low-income apartment where he lives, the boy decides he needs to prepare seriously for his next run. The young man lets out a sigh of relief after managing to organize a huge stash of essential supplies inside his dimensional storage cube. He admits it took a massive effort to pack water bottles, food along with medicine, and a sharp axe inside just 1 cubic meter. With all preparations completely wrapped up, the young man falls onto his bed with a winning grin, knowing his survival is now locked in. Confident that nothing can stop him, the boy closes his eyes to sleep and mentally tells that harsh, ruined world to get ready for his return. Instantly, he wakes up with a start on the torn sofa in that filthy, abandoned room, realizing the dimensional jump worked like a charm. He stretches out cheerfully, noting that his physical body finally feels refreshed and energized after a truly solid night of real sleep. However, the peace is short-lived because his stomach begins growling aggressively, reminding the young man that he is still starving here. Wasting no time, he extends his hand and calls forth his spatial storage cube, which starts hovering with a greenish glow in the middle of the room. The boy unloads a pile of soda bottles and bread onto the floor, feeling pure joy, seeing that every single item made the trip. He flashes a huge smile upon seeing that his plan worked out, and that moving items from the real world into the apocalypse went off without a hitch. Completely famished, the boy begins devouring the Chinese buns and chugging cold soda in a totally desperate, hungry rush. The young man vents about how he was, practically wasting away from malnutrition, and how his body here had gotten so thin his bones were showing. Sitting on the torn sofa, he savors every single bite, noting that even plain, simple bread tastes like the most delicious meal on earth. Radiating happiness, he stuffs his face with cuts of meat and fresh fruit washed down with plenty of cola, celebrating that his belly is finally full. He leans back, completely satisfied and relaxed, enjoying the wonderful feeling of no longer dealing with that crushing weakness that was wearing him down. Glancing to the side, he spots the pricey nutrient vials he picked up at the luxury store and decides to test out how that golden potion works on his body. He recalls that in the real world, the supplement only boosted his circulation, but suspects that in the ruined world, the practical effects will be way stronger. The moment he swallows the golden liquid, the young man's eyes go wide as an absurd surge of physical power begins spreading through his limbs. To test out his new strength, he throws a powerful punch into the air, unleashing a massive shockwave that blows a hole through the abandoned building's wall. Pumped by the destructive results, the boy decides to down a few more expensive vials to fully restore the energy lost after so much stress. Without an official device to measure his power, he estimates his raw strength must have reached around 200 points thanks to his awakening. Armed with his iron pipe and his axe, the Prota strides purposefully toward the exit with a clear goal to hunt monsters and collect gems. Reaching the 18th floor hallway, he spots a large pack of deformed creatures wandering aimlessly around the area, looking for fresh meat. Right away, the monsters pick up on his presence and flare their glowing yellow eyes, turning quickly toward the bold intruder. But instead of running, the Prota stands his ground at the end of the dark hallway, watching his targets with the imposing stance of an elite hunter. With a chillingly wild look and a confident smirk on his face, he licks his lips darkly, announcing that he finally tracked down his prey. The beasts let out a deafening roar of fury and begin charging at high speed toward the boy, ready to tear him apart without mercy. The young man crosses his arms calmly, stating that he will clear this entire floor first, and that every single one of those valuable energy sources will be his. He leaps into combat and begins slicing through the enemies with ridiculous speed, while the system displays all his stats shooting way up. With clean, precise moves, he delivers lethal blows with his axe, without giving the monsters the slightest opening to mount a defense. The boy notices they are fast and carry nasty, venomous claws, concluding that the head is the only true weak spot on those grotesque beings. The main issue is that those endless hordes seem to have infinite stamina and never stop attacking, forcing the young man to fight with extreme focus. But the boy flashes a sly grin, revealing he had already planned for this tough situation, prepping a surprise mid-battle. He swiftly pulls out another golden nutrient vial to catch his breath while delivering a spectacular kick to knock back a monster charging head-on. The young man slides across the floor, smoothly retrieving his dropped weapons, while empty glass containers roll across the blood-stained floor. Overcome with massive drive and determination, the boy lets out a bold battle cry, daring every single monster to come at him all at once. A brutal series of strikes unfolds in the dark, with the desperate shrieks of the creatures echoing down the corridor as the Prota cleans house. The boy finally lets out a sigh of relief, clutching the last nutrient vial after successfully taking out every single threat on the entire floor. Sitting on the remains of the fallen enemies, he notes that the supplement's boost is amazing, though he wishes the serving size per bottle was bigger. Scouring the area for loot, the boy finds some valuable relics resting on top of a dark wood coffee table. He comes across 2 bracelets and 3 green jade pendants, along with a small dragon statue, and decides to take everything to sell in the real world. The young man inspects a large reinforced metal safe, noting with frustration that the frame did not get a single scratch, even after taking multiple axe strikes. But what truly matters is that he managed to collect 4 glowing green crystals, which turned out to be the ultimate prize of the entire hunt. The boy knows that power gems do not drop from every defeated enemy, so securing 4 of them on a single floor is considered incredible luck. Curious to see what will happen, he decides to swallow another glowing crystal right away to test the physical changes on his system. A violent surge of green lightning begins pulsing through his entire body, making him feel his power level shoot up to a whole new tier, wanting even more power. The boy shoves 2 more crystals into his mouth at once, pushing past his body's safe limits in pursuit of evolution. The energy overload is massive, making the young man yell in agony as explosive green vapor begins venting from every single joint. Suddenly, multiple high-precision green laser beams shoot out from his body in all directions, slicing through walls and dicing what was left of the monsters. The young man deactivates his new ability and watches the green laser slowly fade from his fingertips with a look of utter amazement. He stares at his own hand for a few moments, unable to believe the absurd tier of destructive power he just brought out. The beams cut through everything in their path so cleanly and precisely that it looked as if the air itself had been sliced by a blade. Looking around, the boy sees that the heavy metal door was reduced to neat little blocks of iron, while his mind points climb. He realizes with excitement that he awakened a sort of ultra-powerful death beam capable of shredding reinforced steel like paper. Pumped by the results, the Prota decides to raise his arm again to test the skill once more and see how much energy the blast uses. The young man points his index finger toward the iron scrap left from the destroyed locker, feeling the power gather in his hand. He smiles, reflecting on how the technique is totally silent, even when cutting hardened steel, meaning he can take down targets without making a sound. The boy walks calmly over to the remains of the steel safe that was cleanly sliced, curious to discover what kind of secrets were kept inside. Reaching his hand into the opening of the cut metal, the Prota's eyes light up with curiosity, noticing several stacked bundles deep inside. But his hype instantly fades upon pulling out stacks of old pre-apocalypse paper bills, realizing the cash is completely useless in the real world. Annoyed by the bad luck, the boy simply tosses the paper notes back onto the room floor, noting that you cannot buy anything with that stuff. He brushes the useless cash aside and decides to take one more close look inside the sliced safe, praying to find something with actual real value. Suddenly, a massive stack of shiny gold bars rolls out from the hidden compartment, making the room's floor gleam brightly. The young man even covers his eyes with his hands, dazzled by the golden light of that huge fortune hidden away in the safe. The boy starts laughing out loud with pure joy as he packs the kilos of gold bars into his inventory, knowing he will make millions in the real world. However, he gets quite a shock upon noticing that his green storage cube has started expanding right before his very eyes. The young man notes that the inventory grew to 1.5 cubic meters, concluding that consuming monster crystals upgrades his powers. He gets thoughtful and considers using his new death beam to do a full sweep of the entire building and secure even more valuable gems, but his stomach lets out another loud rumble, reminding the Prota that all this crazy leveling up burns through a massive amount of energy. Since his supply of bread and soda is completely gone, the move now is to head back to the real world to go shopping and pack more supplies into the inventory. Time passes and the story shifts back to the real world early in the morning, showing the sun's rays lighting up the city's old apartment complexes. Chin-En wakes up in his bed holding a green gem and remembers that swallowing one of these is what unlocked his awesome supernatural skills. He looks at the crystal in his inventory and laments that his real-world body is still weak, since the two dimensions do not share the exact same physical form. The young man stares thoughtfully at the small, glowing green stone, wondering what would happen if he decided to swallow the crystal right here. Driven by curiosity and the urge to grow stronger, the boy opens his mouth and pops the magic stone inside, determined to test reality's limits. Meanwhile, in the high school auditorium, students begin gathering for a high-stakes assembly regarding their future careers. The host announces on the mic that there are only 6 days left until college entrance exams, demanding total focus from all students present. Teacher Ko introduces the renowned Master Cho Baisei from Seihoku Academy, telling the class to feel truly honored by the legend's visit. The host asks for a warm round of applause from the students to welcome the legendary guest, who walks calmly to the center of the main stage. The entire auditorium begins cheering with huge enthusiasm as the respected elder steps up to the mic, leaning on his wooden staff. The old master clears his throat lightly, prepping to start his speech, which promises to focus on the true path of martial arts. He mentions he will keep his words brief, explaining directly the massive importance of the entrance exams and giving your all to the craft. Backstage, teacher Ku praises the principal for bringing in such a high-profile figure to scout the school's top prospects in person. The principal finds the situation rather unusual, wondering why a living legend would visit an ordinary school instead of just reviewing test scores. Adjusting his glasses, he asks mysteriously if the teacher has ever heard of a secret university ranked even higher than Seihoku Academy. Teacher Ko gets quite confused by the topic, but replies that the priority right now is ensuring as many of his students pass as possible. The man looks proudly out at the crowd of students, noting that he already has his eye on the top candidates with a real shot at making it. He mentions the wealthy Ba Yuzai, who scored top marks on the last mock exam, finishing just 2 points shy of the Academy's cutoff score. The second top candidate is the ex-girlfriend Ryu Joan, who also secured a stellar score, putting her within reach of her dream spot. The teacher adds that the third name, with strong potential, is Chin-En, but warns that they need to study intensely over the next 6 days. But glancing across the auditorium rows, the man is shocked to notice the boy's seat is completely empty in the middle of the event. Classmates begin whispering among themselves, saying he did not show up to school today and guessing the boy is probably just running late. Teacher Ku gets absolutely furious, fuming upon realizing the student skipped the previous mock exam and is now late for the main lecture. The man grits his teeth in pure frustration, wondering what that reckless kid is up to, while the biggest event of the year is taking place. Meanwhile, at Chin-En's apartment building, several delivery drivers begin shouting down the hall, announcing they have dozens of food orders for the boy. The delivery guys meet right outside the apartment door holding massive bags and get confused, seeing that they were all called to the exact same spot. Suddenly, the door creeps open, revealing Chin-en looking pale, with heavy dark circles resembling a truly ravenous monster. Facing that scary run-down appearance, the delivery workers take a step back, totally freaked out by the boy's look. The prota lets out a strange, low growl, stepping forward like a beast, hungry for food, which sends the poor delivery drivers running and shouting. Chin-en moves fast and snatches the food bags right out of the hands of the startled delivery workers. He slams the door right in their faces, leaving the poor delivery guys shaking in the hallway. The guys are completely lost, and one of them even wonders out loud if what they just saw was a real-life zombie. Terrified, the crew decides not to stick around to find out and takes off running, telling everyone to keep moving. Meanwhile, on the inside, Chin-en starts devouring everything in sight, like an animal that has not eaten in years. After eating until he is ready to burst, the boy finally flops onto the floor, relieved to have his energy back. He takes a deep breath, thinking he almost starved, and realizes the reaction from consuming that zombie crystal was wildly intense. The boy looks back to when he was sitting on the bed moments ago, feeling the crystal's energy finally kicking in. A blue glow had started shining from his chest, bringing a very different vibe from when he awakened powers in the apocalypse. Suddenly, an overwhelming wave of energy erupted from the young man's body, making him yell in pain from the sudden transformation. The moment that bizarre process wrapped up, the first thing Chin-en felt was a hunger so unreal he could barely move a muscle. He rushed over frantically to open the fridge, but the situation was so bleak there was only dust and a few empty containers. Seeing that he was about to starve right in the middle of the kitchen, the young man panicked and started tearing up, clutching the fridge door. The boy managed to find a scrap of dry bread to chew on, but realized he needed way more food to keep going. He knew awakening skills burned energy, but he had no clue the real-world drain would be twice as heavy as in the apocalypse. Looking around that kitchen, now covered in takeout wrappers, the boy decides he needs to hoard tons of food for future sessions. Despite the close call he went through, he smiles upon realizing he finally managed to awaken his new mysterious skill. Looking down at his own hands, he is completely fascinated by the starry glow beginning to form right before his eyes. A floating galaxy opens up before him, and the young man reaches out to touch one of the glowing stars in the space. Instantly, a massive blue vortex appears and pulls the young man inside that cosmic space in overwhelming fashion. When he snaps back to reality, he notices nearly all the trash bags on the room floor vanished, leaving just one behind. The young man stands confused, staring at a perfect clone of himself, while inspecting that small glowing star floating in midair with a mischievous smirk on his face. He decides it is time to test out what this incredible power can actually do. By the following afternoon, we see the prota walking through the city's busy streets with steady, confident steps. Chin-en strolls casually in his hoodie, thinking about how he finally mastered the use of that stellar ability. Although his physical strength is lower here, his mental power spiked to an impressive 300 points, making his energy flow rapidly. He realizes that regular humans lack full body control, which leads to wasting tons of energy with every simple move. But with the new star, he can store excess energy, allowing him to recover his strength and focus whenever he wants. On top of this incredible control, the boy reveals with a gleam in his eye that this ability still hides one more trick. The young man steps into a dark, quiet alley, while a small blue spark floats right behind him, signaling his plan. With a confident smirk on his face, the prota activates his signature skill called Coordinate Shift to move around. Basically, he can summon the star within a 10-meter radius and instantly teleport right to wherever it is located. The boy celebrates, totally hyped, realizing this teleportation technique is flat out one of the most broken skills ever. With this new getaway tool in hand, he finally summons his spatial storage cube packed with gold bars ready to sell. The boy continues on his way with his hood up, hiding his face as he walks down the quiet gray streets toward his stop. He keeps his guard up and keeps walking steadily so he does not draw any unwanted attention from anyone passing through the area. Shortly after, the young man arrives in front of a massive old wooden gate that seems to house a discreet pawn operation. He recalls selling a ring there before and hearing rumors that this place bought absolutely everything without asking any annoying questions. To sell the valuable loot he brings from the apocalypse, the young man needs a reliable buyer who knows how to keep their mouth shut. He pushes the heavy gates open with determination, hoping to strike a solid deal without running into any kind of trouble. As soon as he steps inside, the prota is startled by a strange noise coming straight from the building's main courtyard. Suddenly, a man in a blue suit is sent flying backward, passing right by Chin-en and landing face first on the stone floor. The poor guy goes rolling and tumbling across the stone ground until coming to a stop thoroughly, beaten and spitting blood from the impact. The man groans in pain, completely battered, cursing his bad luck for taking such a humiliating beatdown right in the middle of the courtyard. With a bloody nose and crying in pure panic, he screams in frustration, unable to understand why he was treated so roughly. But before he can complain any further, a red high heel stomps down hard on his face, shutting the guy up immediately. A gorgeous woman in a red dress states that he broke the rules and is officially banned from the premises for good. She gives the guy a final kick, telling him to get lost while our prota just watches the whole rough scene with his arms crossed. The woman takes a drag from her traditional pipe and turns her sharp gaze toward Chin-en, asking if this is his first time here. She walks with an imposing stride and warns in an intimidating tone that inside her territory there are strict rules to follow. That elegant woman in the red dress is none other than Yan Jilyu, the ruthless boss who runs the entire local black market. She takes a stylish puff from her pipe and with a sly smirk welcomes our prota. The boss walks calmly, showing off a stunning presence, while Chin-en follows her lead, venturing deeper into that mysterious venue. Stepping through the doors, he is greeted by a massive street packed with stalls and unique shops, selling a little bit of everything. The boy is impressed by her aura and begins suspecting that this woman hides even greater strength than Teacher Ku. Looking around, he notices that the guards and shoppers in the area also look like seasoned tough fighters. He finally sees why this mysterious spot is considered the biggest black market in all of Yanjiang City. To sell high-value items from the apocalypse without raising unnecessary eyebrows, this place was easily his best bet. The young man scans the trade tables and is amazed to see a ton of weird trinkets and even jars containing human eyes. He spots a small sign stating that they buy merchandise at premium rates, which brings him some serious peace of mind. Thinking fast, the young man begins weighing his options, looking for the perfect trader who would be ready to buy his gold bars. He walks up to a bald old man with a thin mustache and directly asks for the current market rate on pure gold bars. The elder shoots him a look of deep disdain and immediately figures this hooded kid is just an amateur newcomer to the black market. He arrogantly states that he does not do deals under 1 kilogram and tells the boy to take a hike if he does not have that much to sell. A mysterious woman in a white veil standing nearby cuts through the rudeness and calmly explains that they pay 80% of the official value. She adds with total politeness that she does not mind smaller amounts and would be happy to do business as a friendly gesture. The old man grumbles in annoyance, calling the girl soft, and mocks Chin-en, saying the kid probably has a few grams of gold at best. The boy runs the numbers in his head and understands they buy low on the black market to resell later for a sweet profit margin. With complete composure, he tells the veiled woman that he actually brought a generous amount and boldly asks how much capital she has available. The old man bursts out laughing, thinking this is a ridiculous joke coming from a kid who does not even look like he knows martial arts. Paying no mind to her companion's taunts, the mysterious veiled woman looks at the boy and seriously states she can buy up to 10 kilograms of gold. She reveals with a gentle smile that she currently has a clean sum of 4 million yuan, ready to close the deal on the spot. The elder starts yelling in disbelief, claiming it is impossible for some random street kid to be sitting on 10 kilograms of gold. Chin-en decides not to waste time on the old man and takes the offer, figuring this amount will already be a massive help in his life. Without another word, he reaches into his backpack and drops a massive high-purity gold bar right onto the table. The entire crowd of onlookers nearby nearly loses their minds, realizing the boy's gold bar boasts an absurd level of purity. Keeping his mysterious vibe, the young man firmly extends his hand, stating he accepts the 4 million yuan for the goods. The woman hands him a special black market card and explains that he can withdraw clean cash at any bank. He looks over the dark card, finding the method brilliant, since neither party has to reveal their identity or privacy. Very curious about the whole situation, the veiled girl asks somewhat shyly if he happens to have even more high-purity gold bars in stock. The boy replies with total ease that he still has another 30 kilograms of gold ready to go. Instantly, a dead silence washes over the courtyard, and every shady figure around turns in absolute shock at the news. A swarm of eager mercenaries and traders rushes over, desperately pleading to buy even a tiny piece of that fortune. Even the grumpy old man does a total turnaround and begins begging with folded hands, offering to pay 90% of the gold's value. Giving the elder the ultimate cold shoulder, the prota turns his back with a wonderfully petty tone and states he will not sell to him under any circumstances. The old man is left standing there looking totally foolish, completely stunned after being rejected in such a humiliating way in front of everyone. The other traders around begin laughing at the old man's misfortune, saying that is what he gets for looking down on the hooded kid. Chaos breaks out as a massive crowd of wealthy buyers surrounds the young man, flashing briefcases full of cash to secure the gold. A short time later, the young man shows up holding a collection of black cards, tearing up with joy, seeing he made nearly 20 million yuan. The polite veiled woman walks over with a modest smile, saying that next time she would love to buy any jewelry or antiques he might have, watching from a distance with pure spite in his eyes. The old man mutters that a weak guy with that kind of wealth will end up getting taken out in an alley. Chin-En picks up on the elder's hostile aura and mentally replies with disdain, guaranteeing that being young, he will easily outlive him. Leaving the old man to grumble, the boy turns back to the veiled woman and asks if she happens to know anything about antique appraisal. She plays it cool with a modest charm, saying she only has a basic, humble grasp of the relic market. Seizing the perfect moment, the prota decides to open his backpack again to reveal the valuable treasures he brought along. He opens a charming little red box right before her eyes and casually asks how much that beauty might fetch on the market. In that exact second, the woman is left speechless upon seeing several flawless pieces of green and lavender jade gleaming brightly on the table. The word spreads, and other merchants start shouting that the IB, lavender jade, is imperial grade, and that the whole set is worth a massive fortune. The greedy old man nearly has a fit upon noticing that even a sacred piece carved from genuine green jade was casually resting in the mix. With shaking hands and the utmost care, the veiled woman picks up the small green figurine to inspect the details of the masterpiece up close. She realizes the piece is not made from ordinary green jade, but rather from the legendary and ultra-rare dragonstone jade. The crowd around goes into total meltdown upon hearing the name of that mythical mineral that very few people have ever seen up close. Merchants begin elbowing their way forward, desperate to catch a close glimpse of the most valuable relic they have ever laid eyes on. The young woman explains that this type of jade is worth endlessly more than standard green jade thanks to its flawless color and clarity. She crunches the numbers and states with her jaw dropped that a rarity like this easily goes for hundreds of millions of yuan on the market. The stunned gasps of the traders echo down the black market street, leaving everyone with dollar signs in their eyes. News of the 100 million yuan treasure spreads like wildfire, drawing everyone's attention straight to that spot. Boss Yan Jiliu watches the commotion from afar, finding it curious that such a legendary piece would show up in this modest market. She appears before Chin-En and suggests that with this jewel he qualifies to enter the famous and mysterious Wanling auction. Very intrigued by the opportunity, the prota curiously asks what exactly this Wanling auction is all about. The veiled woman explains that this is the city's most mysterious underground event, and only top-tier elites holding multi-million yuan items can get in. The young man thinks quickly and realizes that while he needs cash now, he will make an endlessly bigger haul by putting the jewelry up for auction. He makes his call and asks the boss when the next run of this exclusive event will take place. She replies with a mysterious smile, saying it will happen in 3 days, and guarantees his information will stay strictly confidential. Chin-en weighs his options and considers listing all 3 valuable pieces he brought from the apocalypse in the auction to maximize his profit. The woman adds that if he is desperate for fast cash, he can simply sell the remaining pieces to the guys, right here. Following that reveal, silence temporarily takes over the courtyard as all the merchants process the scale of the situation. Immediately after, the shouting resumes with dozens of wealthy buyers pleading to buy the other jade bracelets for millions of yuan on the spot. They start shoving one another, yelling that they were first and offering bigger fortunes to lock down the purchase. Some of the smaller traders nearly cry in frustration, realizing they do not have enough capital to compete for those rarities. Competitors use the moment to roast the grumpy old man who previously dismissed the boy, thinking he was just a broke nobody. The elder grits his teeth in pure rage while the crowd keeps pushing and yelling to grab the valuable items. Behind his mask, the prota can barely contain his joy and lets out a smirk watching the arrogant old man get humbled. After wrapping up the sales, he finally walks away, breathing a sigh of relief for getting out in one piece from that crowd of dangerous fighters. But right after, he flashes a massive grin, from ear to ear, looking at the insane stack of funded cards he just secured. Adding it all up, he got 16 million for the bracelet, 10 million for the jade, and with the 19 from the gold, it totaled 46 million. The boy imagines himself swimming in cash, celebrating that he went from dead broke to becoming a wealthy young millionaire. Snapping back to reality, the black market boss calmly asks if he has made a final call on whether or not he will attend the auction. The young man turns decisively with a sharp look and states without hesitation that he will absolutely be taking part in that major auction. Pleased with the boy's bold reply, the stunning boss gives a charming smile and officially welcomes him to the underground event. Half an hour later, we see the boy's hand holding a mysterious antique ring that glows faintly under the afternoon light. He walks away from the courtyard, staring quizzically at the ring, wondering how that simple little item could serve as an invite to the auction. He remembers the boss's advice telling him not to lose the ring for anything and asking him to visit her directly whenever he brings in good merchandise. On top of that, she dropped a serious warning advising the young man to be very careful on his way back home. The woman added that in a world where power is everything, plenty of fools try to settle their issues using nothing but raw violence. The young man walks alertly through the gray streets, knowing full well that his deep pockets could easily draw dangerous thieves. He picks up his pace through the narrow, dark alleys, keeping all his senses on high alert for any sign of an ambush. With his heightened awareness, the prota catches the faint sound of hurried footsteps and rustling clothes coming from right behind him. Suddenly, a swift silhouette leaps from atop the walls, attempting to cut off the alley path with an agile move. Chin-en stops dead in his tracks and calmly turns around to face the bold intruder who dared cross his path. The figure lands firmly on the old roof tiles, revealing he is not just a common crook, but an agile fighter. To nobody's surprise, the bald, grumpy old man appears crouched on the roof, gripping a sharp dagger and grinning wildly. The boy simply narrows his eyes behind his mask without showing an ounce of fear in the face of that pathetic ambush. The elder begins climbing down, mocking the young man, saying that carrying such a fortune while being so weak is asking for trouble. He points the gleaming blade with a wicked grin, warning that anyone acting tough without real power ends up getting retired early. But before he can even finish the joke, the old man takes a vicious kick to the chest that sends him flying backward with the sheer force of a 300-point hit. The arrogant elder crashes hard against the alley wall and collapses flat onto the tiled ground, losing all his villain swagger. With a bloody nose and a battered face, he tries to stand up, completely dazed, unable to comprehend the speed behind that strike. Chin-en walks up calmly, adjusting his glove, and sarcastically thanks him for the safety tip he just got from that lowlife. Activating his intimidating blue aura, the young man glares at the elder with glowing eyes, asking which of the two he thinks is getting taken out today. The old man is left totally shocked with his face swollen, realizing that powerful strike hit an incredible 300 power points. That rating is considered the pinnacle for an apprentice, placing the boy squarely boy in the elite tier of martial artists. He realizes that, along with absurd raw strength, the boy packs monstrous speed that lets him close distances in the blink of an eye. Looking at the young man cloaked in blue flames with glowing eyes, the old man has zero doubt left that he is dealing with a true combat monster. The elder cries in regret, thinking about how foolish it was to anger such a powerhouse, and laments not negotiating for the jewelry peacefully. He recalls trying to ambush Chin-en with his little knife so arrogantly, only to find himself humiliated and dumped in an alley gutter. Without a second thought, the elder drops to his knees, begging for mercy and frantically asking the hooded boy for forgiveness. He starts banging his head against the pavement, shouting that this entire mess was caused by his own massive ego. He starts slapping his own face, leaving it battered, and swears up and down that he will never try to rob anyone again in his life. With several broken teeth and tears streaming down, he clasps his hands together, begging the prota to just spare his miserable life. Chin-en simply watches the whole humiliating display in silence, keeping a cold, steady stance that terrifies the old man even more. The boy thinks to himself, surprised that his power jumped from 160 all the way to an impressive 330 in one go. He notes that by combining teleportation with a surprise strike, the opponent did not stand a chance at mounting any defense. This combo of cosmic skills creates a clean, lethal fighting style to catch any criminal off guard out on the streets. Chin-en finds it pretty hilarious that the terrified old man is mistaking him for a Grandmaster martial arts elite. However, he realizes that single strike of raw power burned through a scary 80% of his total spiritual energy reserve. He chuckles relieved, thinking that if the hit had missed, he would have had to teleport away, but is glad to see he can hold his own against fighters. The young man looks at the old man seriously, saying he only wanted to do business in peace, and warns that if he does not want to go down right here, he must hand over all the cash he has on him to Chin-en immediately without trying any funny business against the boy. Meanwhile, back at the black market, boss Yan Zhiliu gets the latest update and is surprised to learn the boy handled everything on his own. Her subordinate confirms the story over the phone while watching the now empty alley from his vantage point above. He reports that the mysterious client needed no bodyguard and that the old thief got the worst of it trying to rob the boy. The man adds that the hooded kid is endlessly stronger than he looks and knocked out the crook with just a single punch. The gorgeous boss lets out an elegant puff of smoke with an intrigued smile, finding the whole turn of events extremely entertaining. Relaxing. Back, she admits, she totally underestimated the boy, thinking he was just a student and not a legit martial arts fighter. She stares thoughtfully at the ceiling, trying to piece together the real identity behind that talented, mysterious kid in the hoodie. With a sly move, she wets her red-painted lips, confessing to herself that the boy has thoroughly sparked her curiosity. The sun finally begins setting on the horizon, painting the city sky in gorgeous shades of orange as a quiet evening rolls. In on the prota's phone screen, a sweet notification pops up confirming the deposit of an impressive 50 million yuan. Combining the gold earnings with the cash he took from the regretful old thief, the boy nearly tears up, realizing he is officially filthy rich. Filled with determination, he decides that tonight he will give his all to gather even more high-value relics in the ruined world. The young man walks with a bounce in his step, imagining that if he found this much in a single building, what could he find? Checking entire banks and jewelry stores, he remembers the zombie crystals, knowing he needs to level up as soon as possible if he wants to handle the bizarre creatures in that realm. But before diving into any wild schemes, the young man decides to swing by a luxury mall to stock up on a massive supply of food and essentials. He heads down the mall escalators, calmly watching the wealthy shoppers strolling comfortably around the venue. As he rides down, he passes right beside a young woman with glasses and short hair who seems to be handing out promo flyers. The friendly girl walks up to him with a sweet smile, asking if he might be interested in purchasing a luxury apartment. Chin-en looks over the flyer and likes the sound of it, but politely mentions that unfortunately he is short on time to talk business today. He says goodbye, mentioning he will reach out if he changes his mind, leaving the sales agent super excited about the potential buyer. The girl blushes with a smile, truly, hoping the young man decides to buy the place, since that sale would land her a sweet commission bonus. However, another snooty agent in high heels walks over to mock her, saying that wasting time on a broke student is total nonsense. Accompanied by a wealthy older man, she scoffs at the prota, commenting loudly that a skinny student could never afford to buy anything. The man smiles foolishly all over the arrogant woman, swearing up and down that he will buy as many luxury apartments as she wants. The two keep showing off their over-the-top affection in the middle of the hallway, leaving the promoter in glasses thoroughly grossed out. The gold digger turns slightly and drops a sarcastic tip to her coworker, claiming you have to know how to spot real money. The two walk off, laughing loudly, while the poor girl in glasses just takes a deep breath, trying to keep her cool with her coworker. She pushes up her glasses with resolve, thinking to herself that the hooded young man who spoke to her earlier was definitely not faking. In another section of the mall, we see the prota's shopping cart packed full of bread cakes, cookies, and gallons of premium mineral water. Chin pushes the cart, tired of daily shopping runs, but knows he needs surplus energy on top of hoarding medicine and gear for the apocalypse. He realizes the move would be to buy a massive warehouse to store everything and starts seriously considering buying a real home. Night finally settles over the big city and the lights at the prota's apartment turn on, showing he is already back home. Lying comfortably in his bed, Chin shuts his eyes and drifts off to sleep, kicking off his daily jump into the ruined realm. Dawn breaks gray and bleak, revealing the silent, destroyed ruins of that post-apocalyptic dimension, crawling with monsters. Sitting comfortably on a rooftop, the young man sips hot coffee, noting that the chaotic view is actually not half bad. He watches the zombies stumbling around below, wondering, what on earth could have happened for that world to collapse like this? While enjoying his drink, he recalls that the time zones here run completely opposite to his home realm in the real world. Now full and well-fed, the boy stands up with purpose, stating that the time to hunt has finally arrived. He lets out a long sigh, looking at his combat gear, complaining about how basic his makeshift weapons look. The young man tells himself that as soon as he buys his new place in the real world, he will drop good money on proper high-tier gear. Suddenly, he kicks open one of the hallway doors, coming face to face with two hungry zombies waiting in the dark. With a wicked smirk on his face, he greets the monsters and kindly asks them to drop plenty of crystals for his collection. The undead seem genuinely confused by such a bold welcome, staring at the young man, unable to grasp the nerve on this skinny kid. But before they can make a move, Chin dashes forward like lightning delivering clean. Lethal cuts to slice both enemies down in seconds. He begins clearing floor by floor, moving quickly from the 17th floor down to the 15th in a non-stop high-speed sweep. The young man catches his breath with his axe in hand, while the diced remains of the monsters lie across the dark, blood-stained floor. He realizes he managed to clear 3 full floors in one go, but the physical toll ended up costing a heavy chunk of his stamina. Suddenly, a gray zombie arm pops out from a pet door in the wall, grabbing his pants and giving the prota quite a scare. The little zombie on the other side of the wall lets out a high-pitched, nasty growl, trying to bite Chin foot through the opening. The young man looks toward the end of the dark hallway upon hearing strange sounds, realizing there are still some creatures roaming about. A horde of monsters stumbles out of one of the apartments, letting out creepy growls the moment they sense a living intruder. Chin quickly finds himself cornered by hungry enemies, closing in from every possible angle, and tightens his grip on the axe handle. Instead of panicking, the young man simply flashes a confident grin, noting that the target count is way higher than he first anticipated. He lands a clean strike with his melee weapon, severing the arm of the first opponent that dared step too close to him. The severed limb flies through the air as dark blood splatters while green lines of the death laser begin glowing at the protas. Fingertips. The silent, lethal laser beams cut through the air like razor blades, cleanly bisecting the zombies' bodies with absolute precision. Chin aims his fingers masterfully, letting the cutting energy rip through the corridor, wiping out all the undead in the blink of an eye. The remains of the enemies hit the floor one after another, soaking the ground in dark blood while the boy holds his ground firmly. The few survivors left in the rear seem frozen in shock, unable to understand how the front group vanished so quickly. Reflected in the cloudy eyes of the monsters, we see the boy crossing his fingers with a bright green glow signaling that the real sweep is on. A massive, glowing, cross-shaped slash erupts in the middle of the hallway, instantly tearing apart the rest of the monster horde. The proto remains standing with ease as the fallen remains of the creatures drop around him like dry leaves. He turns around, hearing a faint noise, and notices the young zombie is still stuck, trying to grab him through the pet door. With a playful smirk, the young man makes a scissor motion with 2 fingers getting ready to put a permanent end to that lingering threat. In that exact moment, a green laser beam slices through the plastic flap, putting down the small monster once and for all, quickly and cleanly. Testing his power, he loves the fact that the death laser is razor sharp and ignores any physical distance barrier. However, he considers that hunting one by one burns too much. Stamina and figures grouping them all in one spot would make for an optimal clear. Luckily, he remembers he brought a massive stash of golden nutrient supplements in his bag to fully recharge his stamina. The boy drops the empty glass bottles onto the floor, feeling the revitalizing energy flow through his body, and decides to keep sweeping the building. Heading down a few more levels, we see the quiet, eerie 10th floor, looking like a vandalized, dark, abandoned school hallway. Suddenly, a young, pink-haired survivor wearing a distinct cap peeks through a cracked door, spooked by the heavy footsteps approaching. She worries that the creature drawing near might be one of those highly lethal Tier 2 mutant zombies. Before she can lock the door, a bizarre monster leaps through the window straight at her, sending the girl tumbling back with a shriek. She covers her mouth in horror, noticing the invading creature has a completely crushed, disfigured head in a repulsive way. Her heart races, hearing combat noises, and she begins wondering frantically if there is another living human fighting out there. But her worst nightmare hits when a massive monster with razor teeth and glowing red eyes steps forward, roaring right in her face. In pure desperation to save her own skin, the girl pulls a firearm and lands a clean shot right into the mutant monster's face. Right after she panics, remembering that the loud gunshot will draw every undead in the area straight to her location. With no time to lose, the pink-haired girl scrambles up the concrete rubble of the staircase, trying to find a quick escape route. Unfortunately, the reflection of her frantic gaze reveals that several hungry creatures are already rushing toward where the shot came from. She bolts down the building's stairs, screaming for help, while the creatures sprint right behind, ready to tear her apart. The pink-haired girl begins thinking of her father with tears in her eyes, apologizing for not being able to hold out. She remembers that even with a weapon, he was unable to defend against the terrible creatures that overran the area on that tragic day. The man handed the weapon to his daughter with a sad smile before being completely overwhelmed by the ravenous monsters. Back in reality, she takes a bad spill right in the middle of staircase number 12 while trying desperately to get away. The girl tumbles down the steps, landing right in front of the pack of zombies charging down the stairs ready to feast. Making matters worse, more undead emerge from the floor below, cornering the poor girl who has nowhere left to run. Figuring this is her sad end, she curls up crying, waiting to be torn apart by the creatures at any second. Suddenly, Chin-en appears at the top of the stairs, looking imposing, and sarcastically remarks that she is pretty gifted at drawing zombies. The girl then decides to share the planet's history, explaining that Earth used to be a vibrant, blue, beautiful place to live. It was a world rich in clean water and stunning landscapes before the climate disaster that dismantled human society. Until decades ago, an unprecedented bizarre sandstorm engulfed the entire globe, bringing in extreme weather patterns. With that, the land turned into a barren wasteland, resources dried up, and animals underwent wild mutations just to stay alive. Even as the survivors fought with everything they had to hold on, a terrible outbreak began spreading a few years later. This new threat that plagued what remained of humanity became known to everyone by the ominous name of the Death Chi sickness, Chin. En listens closely and asks if this awful disease was the true cause behind turning people into zombies. She confirms, explaining that the virus is airborne and has already transformed over 80% of humanity into hungry monsters. The girl mentions she heard rumors about a superhuman outpost up north, but never had the strength to travel there and chose to hide instead. She adds that these superhumans are individuals with special overpowered abilities very similar to what Chin En possesses. Trembling with fear, the girl swears she shared everything she knows and begs for her life, stating she does not even have any food hidden here. In a panic, she clutches the handgun to her chest, pleading for the Prota to let her go before she does something crazy. In an extreme act of sheer panic, the girl presses the gun barrel against her own chin, crying uncontrollably and ready to pull the trigger. Chin En is totally shocked, seeing that the girl would rather check out of this world before he even gets a word in. The young man scratches his head, frustrated, seeing how broken humanity has become, to prefer going down over trusting another human. He warns that firing will only draw more monsters and asks how she survived this long, to which she replies that she relies purely on intuition. The girl explains that her instincts always guide her to food and reveals that she is also really good at hacking electronic locks. Chin En's eyes light up with greed hearing this, and he asks excitedly if she knows where to find gold or jewels around this building. She replies calmly that she saw plenty of jewelry and gold tossed aside like trash in the rooms while scavenging for food to survive. Hearing the magic word, the Prota is already drooling with excitement, imagining the fortune he will gather with her help. The young man pats her on the shoulder, super friendly, and says she has finally proven to be an extremely useful business partner. With a grin straight out of a cartoon villain, Chin En asks if she would like to get her hands on some real food. She accepts right away, but nearly faints when the young man suggests trading valuable groceries for the gold and gems she finds along the way. He starts calculating in his head, figuring out what a fair exchange rate would be for 5 kilograms of pure gold. The hustler offers a cup of jelly or maybe half a steamed bun, leaving the poor girl completely stunned by such an abundance. And to top off the deal, he promises that if she finds top-tier jewelry, she might even score a bottle of clean water. The girl begins sobbing with joy, holding onto his leg while the Prota stands there confused, wondering why she is making such a big deal out of it. She thanks him through tears, calling the young man a total saint for agreeing to trade sacred food for useless rocks and metal from this world, breaking into a cold sweat. From the flattery, Chin En tells her to dry her tears and get to looking for gold since the area is fully cleared of zombies. He even takes the chance to outsource more work, offering a bag of popcorn for every 10 zombie crystals she manages to gather. As he watches the girl run off, super motivated, he celebrates finding a local scout to handle all the heavy exploration work. With the heavy lifting handed off, the Prota decides to use this quiet moment to boost his own power with the crystals picked up. He lays out the day's loot, counting 15 zombie crystals earned after taking down 40 of those creatures for good. Sitting on the floor, the young man reflects that the drop rate dips on the lower floors while the enemies become stronger and far more dangerous. After setting up a true feast of real food in front of him, Chin En gets ready to down all the crystals in one go. Without thinking twice, the young man pops 10 green crystals into his mouth at once, eager to feel the wave of mutant energy hit his system. A violent surge of green lightning and pure power begins coursing heavily through every part of our Prota's body. Even with the massive jolt he feels, it was not quite enough, and decides to swallow the remaining 5 crystals from his hand. A massive blazing green aura erupts around him, making his eyes shine brightly with the energy gathered from the process. The young man lets out a wild roar as a massive wave of destructive force spreads, violently ripping apart everything around him. Once the dust settles, he opens his eyes, which now gleam in a sharp, bright green, thoroughly impressed with this crazy upgrade. Checking out his new stats, Chin En celebrates feeling his body cleansed of impurities and far stronger, faster, and more powerful than ever. Right after the young man notices his spatial storage expanded significantly, reaching a capacity of 2 cubic meters. At that moment, Chin-en's stomach begins growling insanely loud, proving that such a drastic, evolution drained every bit of his energy. Wasting no time, he dives into the feast, devouring the giant lobster and roast meats he set up with the speed of a truly starving beast. After eating like there is no tomorrow, the young man lies on the mattress, completely full and loving life with a belly full of great food. Feeling the fatigue set in, he uses his spatial storage to swiftly pack away all the leftover food scraps and bones scattered around. Realizing he is covered in sweat and post-apocalyptic dust, he decides the best way to wrap up the day is with a nice relaxing bath. The young man had stored 2 massive jugs of clean water in the apartment's abandoned bathroom, setting up his own private spa amidst the chaos. Without a second thought, he strips down and happily hops into the makeshift tub, celebrating as if he were staying in a 5-star luxury hotel. The young man washes his hair cheerfully, feeling the warm water cleanse his body after a long day of intense hunting. Against the zombie hordes, he has fun playing with the foam, thinking that hoarding high-end toiletries from the real world was the best move he ever made. To complete the ultimate flex, the young man relaxes in the warm water with rubber duckies while sipping on a fine glass of wine. While our prota enjoys his peaceful downtime on the upper floor, the pink-haired girl is working hard, locked into her new mission. She scours the empty apartments and spots a massive red decorative vase, wondering if this kind of antique also counts as treasure. Even with the massive junk sack weighing a ton on her back, she pushes through to drag everything without leaving a single piece behind. Young Shushu knows she cannot give up over a little extra weight since her benefactor is willing to trade all that scrap for delicious meals. She gives herself a quick pep talk, trying to gather every ounce of strength she has to haul the heavy treasures up to Chin-en's apartment. The pink-haired girl drags a massive concrete block, guessing that all this massive effort must be worth at least half a steamed bun. Moments later, Chin-en steps out of the bath and is completely stunned to find a crazy mountain of vintage vases and gold boxes in the living room. He points confused at a giant rustic armchair sitting in the middle of the pile and asks what on earth she was thinking, bringing that wooden beast. Shushu cheerfully explains that she heard furniture carved from rare expensive wood used to be worth as much as solid gold bars before the fall. She proudly shows off 3 heavy black iron safes, saying that even though she could not open them, she figured they would be super useful for him. Sweating nervously at the mountain of valuable junk, the young man thanks her for the effort and kindly asks her to just call him Chin-en. He is amazed that such a petite girl managed to carry so much weight and decides to reward her grit as promised. The young man places a warm, steamed bun, a tasty cup of jelly, and a bottle filled with clean mineral water on the table for the girl. Seeing that royal spread right in front of her, the poor girl begins sobbing with pure joy at finally getting to eat a real meal. Next, she extends her trembling hands and reveals she also managed to gather some glowing crystals from the fallen zombies across the building. The girl expresses regret for only finding 4 of those valuable green crystals, knowing she will not be able to claim her dream popcorn reward. Chin-en collects the green stones, feeling very satisfied, admitting that this haul was way better than he anticipated for a first day on the job. The young man thinks to himself that she is quite naive for handing over the crystals instead of using them to awaken her own abilities. He holds one of the glowing stones before her eyes and asks if she truly knows what these mutant energy crystals are actually for. Shushu replies that eating the stones grants powers, but asks why on earth he does not eat them too if he knows this big leveling secret. She explains that after the world fell, many tried eating the crystals, but the process requires the body to burn an absurd amount of energy. Since she spent the last few months surviving on nothing but stale crackers, her body would never handle the strain, and she would go down regardless. The prota listens to the explanation in silence and finally understands the real dangers tied to over-consuming those mutant green stones, while the girl gets all hyped up to enjoy her steamed bun at the table. Chin-en remains thoughtful, weighing the risks of his own progression. With that, he reaches out and drops a massive lobster claw right onto her plate, leaving the pink-haired girl completely stunned by the surprise. The young woman's eyes widen in disbelief at what she is looking at and asks, while stammering with emotion, if that is actually real lobster. Chinen says it is a bonus for her hard work and mentions he is heading back home but will return if he needs more loot from the building. The girl points at the pile of valuable relics gathered on the apartment floor and asks what he plans to do with all those huge items. With a sly smile, the young man simply snaps his fingers, channeling his green spatial energy directly over the entire pile of loot. In the blink of an eye, every safe box and vase vanishes into thin air, leaving only the heavy carved wooden armchair sitting in the empty living room. Shushu is left with her jaw dropped, witnessing that magic, and realizes in awe that the young man wields a super rare spatial manipulation ability. The young man turns around and leaves the apartment, leaving young Shushu on her own to enjoy her well-deserved post-apocalyptic feast. She cries with joy upon realizing that Chinen's ability explains his endless supply of food and swears to work even harder to help him out. Happily digging into the lobster, she decides she needs to put together a detailed map of the entire complex to mark the best spots for loot. The girl locks her bright eyes onto the hand-drawn map, planning to hit the neighboring bank branch, which must be loaded with valuable goods. Striking a dramatic pose with the lobster claw in her mouth, Shushu promises herself she will track down a mountain of rare relics for Chinen. But right in the middle of her victory celebration, she ends up choking badly on a bite of food and starts coughing frantically for air, catching her breath from the scare she lies on. The sofa relieved enjoying her dessert and thankful she did not perish from dehydration after days without clean water. Young Shushu relaxes on the sofa, hugging the water bottle, determined to get plenty of rest today and dreaming of taking a proper bath soon. The pink-haired girl opens the door, grumbling that she was foolish for not saving any water even to drink, and that washing her face would be the most she could do. However, the moment she opens the bathroom door of the abandoned apartment, she gets a massive surprise from what sits right before her eyes. The poor girl stands completely frozen upon noticing the makeshift tub is overflowing with clean water left behind by her generous savior. She steps closer slowly and realizes that despite a few small floaters drifting around, that really is genuine, completely usable water. A high-pitched scream of pure joy echoes through the ruined building as the young woman celebrates the absolute best gift she could have received in this mess. Meanwhile, in the real world, Chinen wakes up comfortably in his warm bed, scratching his head and getting his bearings after another long run. Suddenly, the young man remembers all the loot he managed to collect and flashes a huge, greedy smile, realizing he hit the jackpot. The young man summons his spatial storage cube right in the middle of the room, revealing the mountain of jewelry, gold, and relics that Shushu brought in. He checks over the rare pieces and concludes that this absurd haul of wealth is worth endlessly more than any other treasure he has found so far. With his pockets lined, the young man steps out of his room, determined to take all those valuable relics to be properly appraised at tomorrow's auction. Chinen heads to the utility sink to brush his teeth and start the day calmly, having zero clue about the drama waiting for him right next. He looks out the apartment window, taking in the bright sunny day, thinking everything was going to be completely wonderful on this peaceful morning. Suddenly, a huge bucket of dirty water comes splashing down right on his head, soaking his entire pile of clean laundry hanging out to dry. The young man gets furious at the pure disrespect and yells outside, asking who was brainless enough to dump water from the balcony and ruin his clothesline. A noisy, obnoxious neighbor with hair rollers appears at the window above, complaining that it is his fault for hanging clothes there in the first place. The older woman scoffs, telling the boy to move out if he has an issue with it, and grumbles that kids these days have zero respect for their elders. Chinen does not let the disrespect slide and fires back, stating that the clueless lady's behavior crossed every single line of basic decency. The woman loses her temper, threatening to call her husband, who works security for the powerful Ba family, to rough the boy up tonight. The prota steps back inside the room upon hearing the Ba family name and begins suspecting that his rival Ba Yuzai is behind the whole thing. He realizes his rival is trying to throw him off before the academy entrance exam, since getting into a street brawl now would ruin his chances. Gritting his teeth in frustration, the young man grips the wall so hard he cracks the plaster, swearing that Rat will pay big time. Even though he wants to go off on them, Chin-en takes a deep breath and steps out of the house, determined to settle the score directly during the academy exams. Meanwhile, the crooked neighbor counts a fat stack of cash, grinning ear to ear, thinking it is way too easy to make a living making a student's life miserable. She watches the boy from her window, saying it serves that broke kid right for getting on the bad side of the rich, Ba family's young master. The lady flicks her cigarette ash onto the street, concluding that having her husband take the boy out would be a great way to lock in her bonus. The scammer lets out a wicked laugh, imagining the mountain of extra cash she will receive from the elites once the beatdown is done. Sometime later, we see the sleek mirrored storefront of a high-end real estate agency called New Life, located right in the city's commercial district. Inside, a very friendly young agent with glasses and short hair greets the prota with a bright smile, welcoming him in. She looks closely at his face and gets startled, recognizing the young man who just walked into the shop holding a cup of instant noodles, eating his ramen casually. Right in the middle of the store, Chin-en announces without hesitation that he is here looking to buy a new place. The polite agent quickly pulls up a chair, asking the young man to make himself comfortable while she pulls the files on the agency's top listings. She tells him to take his time eating and even offers extra snacks and tea, showing top-tier service despite his casual look. However, a snobby, arrogant agent in red heels walks over, watching the two with a look of pure disdain and mockery. The woman crosses her arms and grumbles out loud that a scruffy kid like that could never afford to buy a real property. The sweet employee tries to diffuse the tension, asking her coworker to stop with the unnecessary remarks in front of the client who keeps on eating. The snob loses it and snaps, stating that this is a serious firm and not a public cafeteria, telling the boy to get lost before she calls security. Unbothered by the tantrum, Chin-en calmly repeats that he is here as a paying client looking to buy a high-end property. The high-maintenance woman gives a mocking laugh and challenges the boy, saying that if he actually buys a home here, she will drop to her knees and beg for his forgiveness. The boy just gives a smirk and shoots back, telling her not to bother since seeing her face crawling on the floor would not bring any joy to his day. Ignoring the pushy woman, the young man turns to the friendly agent and asks her to pull up the catalog featuring the top listings. The girl gets all excited and opens the listing folder while her jealous coworker stands there with crossed arms, hoping the deal falls through. The snob walks away stomping her heels, thinking any normal person could see the boy as flat broke and that her coworker is just wasting her time. She rubs it in, saying that is why her coworker's numbers are in the gutter, and mentions she is going to assist real clients, leaving the sweet girl a bit awkward, trying to move past the awkwardness. The agent focuses on the catalog, explaining she picked out great solid options and asks if he wants to see them in person. Chin-en flashes a satisfied smile and takes the invite, immediately eager to see his future palace, funded by Apocalypse Gold, up close. They head straight to the upscale district, arriving in front of a massive high-end residential skyscraper built with modern mirrored glass. The girl shows off the area, highlighting the skyline view, and explains that the complex has subways, parks, and malls, along with fully furnished units. The young man reviews the details of the luxury property thoughtfully, trying to decide what size unit would best fit his daily needs. He watches the city rush through the massive glass window, admiring the security and prime location of the building before making his move. But in the middle of his real estate thoughts, Chin-en suddenly remembers a key detail he almost overlooked in his moving plans. Suddenly, a heavyset bald man walks into the room, flexing and announcing he is about to approve a multi-million project worth 5 million yuan. He strolls through the luxury unit accompanied by Lin, that exact snobby agent who was looking down on our prota earlier. The man acts completely shameless, giving the gold-digging agent a slap on the rear while she plays along, purely focused on his wallet. The heavy guy praises the place and decides to buy a small unit to help her sales numbers, but the woman quickly tries pushing 2 units on him. He gives a sly smirk, asking if her plan is to use one of those apartments as their private little getaway spot. Linlin pretends to act shy about the joke while staying glued to his side, saying she just wants to spend more time close to her big spender. The man turns bright red, puffing up with excitement from the cheap flattery, and decides to give in to the agent's charms. Acting all high and mighty, he decides to close on both units on the spot, leaving the gold digger jumping for joy over the old man's generosity. The wealthy guy agrees to put the second unit under her name, but notes he is only covering the down payment and that she will have to cover the monthly notes. The two smile at each other while secretly plotting to pull a fast one on one another. The moment the financing paperwork wraps up, Chin En and the friendly agent watch the whole awkward scene in silence until Linlin turns around and notices them on the same floor. The woman walks over with a fake smile, asking, sarcastically, if her broke client finally made up his mind and is going to buy something. The nice employee tries to stick up for the boy, shyly explaining that he is still reviewing the options carefully before signing the wealthy client. And Linlin starts laughing, saying that buying an apartment takes serious money and that covering just a down payment means nothing. The snob scoffs, saying her co-worker has zero business sense and that the boy flat out does not have the cash for a spot. Like this. She puts the young man down, saying, even the smallest unit costs an absurd fortune, doubting a broke student has anywhere near that kind of cash. The friendly agent feels deeply embarrassed by her co-worker's disrespect and tries in vain to get her to stop talking. Linlin snaps, telling her co-worker to shut up, rubbing it in that her sales are sitting at zero and demanding she turn in her resignation already. Chin En stays cool with an ironic smirk, asking if she thinks she is the top seller, and challenges her to reveal her numbers for the month. The woman brags, stating her numbers are high and that she already brought in $2 million this month, telling the boy to accept that he is broke. The prota pretends to be shocked and sarcastically remarks that it must be super easy to be the top seller at this shop bringing in so little cash. He mentions he does not want the hassle of picking room by room and simply decides to buy the entire floor of that residential building. The news drops, like an absolute bomb in the luxury showroom, leaving everyone completely floored by the offer. The sweet agent's eyes go wide and she stammers, unable to process that the young man wants to buy a whole floor in that high-end building. Linlin laughs, claiming the floor runs 16 million yuan and that there is no way a kid looking like that has that kind of money. The boy smirks and fires back, saying that if that is all it costs, then he will just take 2 entire floors of the building to shut everyone up. He pulls his ultra-exclusive golden card from his wallet and announces he will be paying in full. The payment of 32 million clears, immediately leaving the bald, rich guy breaking into a cold sweat, seeing the boy's financial power. The rest of the firm's staff comes running over in shock, seeing that the boy paid the entire fortune up front without blinking. The manager asks if he bought 2 floors to open a hotel, but Chin En replies that he just wants to turn them into a storage facility. The staff nearly pass out hearing that the boy plans to use expensive prime location apartments as a simple junk warehouse. He explains calmly that outer neighborhoods are terrible for shopping runs and that this building's downtown spot is way more practical. Chin En points to the friendly agent and reveals he made this massive purchase simply to give the poor girl a boost on her sales goals. Everyone stands stunned by such a display of wealth and generosity while Linlin drops to the floor crying in complete denial over the scene. The bald businessman panics, realizing the massive mistake he made, and shoves the snobby agent away, trying to cut ties with that scammer. He bows before the young man, apologizing for getting swayed by that clueless woman, and offers the services of his construction firm. The man pushes to exchange business info, hoping to land a renovation contract with the new millionaire. Linlin completely loses her mind, screaming hysterically, claiming this is all a cheap setup between the two to embarrass her in front of everyone. With a wild, bloodshot look in her eyes, she swears that with her stunning looks, she would never lose a sale to her plain co-worker. Right then, the door swings wide open as executive management bursts in, demanding to know who the legendary client was that bought 2 whole floors. The agency president himself bows before Chin En and respectfully invites him to wrap up the paperwork in the private VIP lounge. The boy does not even budge and coldly replies that he is not going to any lounge until the president deals with his staff's internal issues. Getting the message, the boss orders Linlin's immediate firing for disrespecting a client and bans the woman from the entire real estate sector. The woman is dragged out crying and flailing by security, bitterly mourning the loss of the biggest commission of her entire career. She screams in desperation, begging for mercy and offering sincere apologies to the prota, while shedding rivers of regretful tears. The snooty woman's desperate cries echo across the skyscraper's facade as she is kicked out onto the street with absolutely nothing. The president tries to flatter Chin-en, saying he will personally handle his account from now on, but the boy shuts it down on the spot. With a friendly smile, he points to the sweet agent in glasses and states he wants all business closed exclusively through her. The boss agrees immediately, promoting the girl to elite status. On the spot, ordering her to treat the young millionaire with the utmost respect. The friendly agent bows, blushing, and thanks Chin-en, thinking in total awe about how incredible that mysterious young man is. The sweet agent watches the young man from afar, completely frozen, wondering who on earth that mysterious, ridiculously rich boy actually is. Chin-en walks calmly through the busy city streets, having zero clue about the massive shockwave and chaos he just left behind. The manager hands over the keys and access card to the young man, letting him know he can move in whenever, and asks if he will need moving transport. The young man gladly accepts the help, stating he plans to move in today, and the manager agrees, taking down Chin-en's current address. As he walks, the prota plans to notify his landlady about the move right after finishing moving all his new belongings over. Suddenly, an extremely loud, furious voice rings out across the street, shouting that he finally found the kid, giving the boy quite a start. A massive red-eyed powerhouse leaps out of nowhere toward our prota, with outstretched claws ready to tackle the boy onto the asphalt. But Chin-en dodges with effortless speed and agility, causing the giant to miss entirely and lose total control of his jump. The big guy crashes headfirst right into a red fire hydrant sitting on the edge of the sidewalk. The hydrant snaps in half, and a massive burst of high-pressure water shoots up into the air, soaking everyone walking down. The street at that moment, drenched and deeply embarrassed. The man awkwardly apologizes while trying in vain to plug the water geyser spraying in the middle of the walkway. To make things worse, the big guy's phone rings with an alert, letting him know he just got hit with a steep 500 yuan fine. People on the street begin laughing at his face while officers walk over to handle the hydrant mess, and the prota watches the scene with pity, holding back his laughter to keep from cracking up. Chin-en recognizes the giant and asks what his master teacher Ko is doing in the middle of the street. Teacher Ku gets even more furious and screams at the top of his lungs, stating that he should be the one asking the broke kid that question. He grabs Chin-en by the shoulder and angrily asks where he has been since he has not been answering calls and vanished right before the academy finals. The boy tries to explain with an awkward smile, not knowing how to explain his secret adventures in the other world's zombie apocalypse. Before he can get a word out, he gets dragged roughly by his hoodie by his jacked master, who refuses to hear any excuses. The master drops a heavy lecture stating that skipping class over a girl is pathetic and reiterates that his only focus should be his test scores. Chin-en listens patiently with an awkward smile, trying to calm down his stressed, muscular martial arts instructor. The man then softens his tone, revealing he knows about his family's financial struggles and tells the boy to take a gift to help him out. The prota's eyes light up, seeing the glow of 2 golden vials of special nutrient supplements designed to give a major strength boost. Chin-en realizes those nutrient vials must have cost a real fortune on Teacher Ku's tight salary. He grips the golden vials tightly in his hand, feeling massive gratitude toward his master. Teacher Ku announces they are heading back to school for extra lessons and asks if the boy has been slacking on his training. Arriving at the entrance of the martial arts dojo, they run straight into a heavily tattooed guy with a mean look on his face. The obnoxious man, with a mocking smirk, recognizes the master and calls him Kong Shang-Wu in a super provocative way. Completely ignoring the taunt, Teacher Ko just grabs Chin-en by the arm and tells him they should get out of there right away. The rival keeps prodding, asking if the kid is the teacher's pet for receiving expensive supplements as a gift. The pushy guy says the kid must be talented, while Teacher Ku angrily shoots back that it is none of his business. The rival yells that no talent goes anywhere under Ku's outdated training methods since his own students are far superior. He rubs it in that the master was totally humiliated in the past, making the tension between them rise even more. Teacher Ku tries to keep walking calmly, but notices Chin-en suddenly stopped dead in his tracks. The master tries pulling the boy, but is shocked to find he does not move a single millimeter from the spot. Ignoring the master, the prota turns around with a serious look and begins walking straight toward the rival dojo. The young man walks calmly up to the entrance of the rival academy, where the smug instructor is still looking down on him. With a smug grin, Chin-en asks if that guy standing there is really the top instructor in Yanjiang City. The bully puffs out his chest with full pride and confirms that he is indeed the grandmaster here, and the strongest in the entire region. He points his finger at Ko, calling him a loser, and suggests the young man switch sides if he wants any shot at passing the exams. Ko completely loses his cool and yells, telling his rival to shut up because he only won in the past by playing dirty. He accuses the cheater of pumping his own students with banned supplements just to score a temporary boost in strength. The master shouts that this ruins the youth's future, causing their growth to hit a dead end. Right after, the rival throws a fiery kick into the air and screams that a washed-up loser has no right to open his mouth about him. Totally enraged, Teacher Ko winds up a devastating punch, swearing he will not let that disrespect slide no matter what. The two masters collide in the center of the courtyard, unleashing a massive shockwave that kicks up dust in every direction. The impact pushes both fighters back as they slide across the concrete floor, staring each other down, ready for the next move. But suddenly, the cheating instructor's eyes go wide, seeing Chin-en leaping insanely high straight toward him. The rival is left totally confused watching the boy fly toward the massive signboard of his own academy. With a clean, brutal strike, the prota simply tears down the rival dojo's giant sign, sending it crashing hard to the ground. With a sarcastic smirk on his face, the young man casually asks if every student at this academy is this strong, standing on top of the shattered sign. Chin-en challenges the entire dojo to a fight, making it clear he wants to take on everyone there. Both the rival instructor and Teacher Ku are left completely speechless, unable to believe the boy's limitless boldness. Chin-en tells his worried master that since he wanted to test his training, this spot is the perfect place for a live showcase. He gives a confident thumbs up, suggesting the master take a front row seat for the field test he is about to run. The rival dojo master turns bright red with rage, the veins on his forehead ready to pop from such massive humiliation. Unable to take the disrespect any longer, the man charges furiously at Chin-en, screaming at him not to dare look down on him. With total ease, the boy simply dodges the heavy kick, moving at a speed that makes it look like child's play. The attacker's eyes go wide in pure shock upon realizing he whiffed the hit and that the kid did not even break a sweat dodging it. Desperate to land a hit on the boy, the man spins in mid-air, throwing another powerful kick with every ounce of strength left in his body. But before the strike lands, Teacher Ku steps in full force and blocks the attack, protecting his prized student. With a fierce glare, the master shouts with total conviction, warning that he will never let that coward lay a finger on his student. The rival screams, foaming with rage, saying they crossed the line by smashing the sign and that they will pay a heavy price for this. He begins yelling for all his subordinates to surround the streets and make sure nobody leaves the area in one piece. Within seconds, a horde of purple-clad lackeys surrounds the two, promising to deliver an unforgettable beatdown to whoever trashed their dojo. Outside, passers-by begin gathering snapping photos on their phones, wondering what all the street commotion is about. The rival leader demands Ko hand over the boy, immediately threatening to have the master beaten alongside him if he stays in the way, losing whatever little sense he had left. He orders his lackeys to charge in and take down both of them at once. Suddenly, a calm, sarcastic voice rings through the crowd, commenting on how lively everyone seems about this brawl. The bully freezes on the spot upon seeing a respectable elderly man appear, recognizing him instantly as the great Professor Cho. He flips his attitude immediately and begins stammering out apologies for the mess, promising to clean up the scene in the blink of an eye. Even Teacher Ko begins sweating cold, wondering what a high-profile figure like Professor Cho is doing here. The elder reveals he came to inspect the dojo to scout fresh talent, leaving the entire surrounding crowd completely shocked by the visit. The bully tries to play it smart, suggesting they put the whole mess behind them upon noticing Professor Cho knows Teacher Ko. But Cho raises his hand and says, "The sign is the soul of a dojo, so they must settle this fairly as martial arts law dictates." The elder adds that this would be an excellent chance for him to see the true strength of the academy's students firsthand. The crowd gossips, noting that official rules allow dojo challenges, and that if the home master wins, he keeps his standing in the city. One of the onlookers asks, in a teasing tone, if the rival master happens to be too scared to take the challenge right in front of everyone. The villain figures his top student would never lose and decides to take the match to clear his name and impress the examiner, Cho. With a slight smile on his face, the respected Professor Chu offers to serve as the official referee for that dojo showdown. The crowd in the stands goes wild, shouting that the event is a must-watch now that a big shot like him is calling the fight. The rival master raises his hand and yells officially, accepting the challenge to reclaim his fight school's damaged honor. The purple-clad students begin cheering loudly, shouting that they will crush the challenger without mercy in the combat ring. Spectators pull out their phones, eager to stream the chaos live on social media, which is bound to rack up tons of views. While everyone cheers excitedly, Teacher Ku watches the scene quietly, wearing a deeply concerned look about how this might turn out. He tells Chin-en to focus on the college entrance exams and asks the boy to walk away and let him handle this mess himself. But Chin-en grabs his master's arm and sarcastically asks if he actually intended to humiliate himself before a cheat like that. With a calm look, the boy tells his master to relax because he cannot stand watching an honest man like him get disrespected by cowards. The prota steps forward with confidence, swearing he will clear his dear master's name and erase all that past humiliation. Everyone takes their seats around the massive official fighting ring, prepped to host the fighters for this major dojo clash. Teacher Ku walks his student to the edge of the ring, still wondering if this whole crazy setup will actually end well for them. While Professor Cho watches everything comfortably from his seat, the rival squad preps their three most promising fighters. The three elite fighters from the opposing dojo bow respectfully before their master before kicking off the matches. The villain states that whoever takes down the challenger will earn a direct recommendation to the prestigious Professor Cho, which is a golden opportunity. They get extremely motivated knowing that recommendation guarantees a clean ticket into the most sought-after martial arts academy. Professor Cho steps into the ring, clearing his throat, and asks for everyone's attention to begin breaking down the dojo challenge rules. He explains that, in a traditional challenge, the invader must first defeat 3 defenders back-to-back in what they call the Trial of the Gates. Only after clearing this trial by fire does the challenger earn the right to fight the dojo master in the final match. The elder points to the big board, noting that each fighter's speed and physical power will be displayed in real time on the giant screen. With a calm gaze, like someone who has seen it all in life, the referee decides it is time to kick off the day's first matchup. The judge finally calls the fighters into the ring under the energetic cheers and huge hype of the loud crowd. The first of the 3 disciples steps up full of swagger, saying he will finish the rookie right off the bat in the opening round. The first opponent, named Wang Hu, throws a punch into the air, displaying his impressive power of 130 points on the board. Next, the bald fighter Niu Li steps forward with pride, showing off 132 points of pure accumulated physical power. The only girl of the trio pulls off a spectacular acrobatic leap, proving her agility sits on a totally extraordinary level. She lands smoothly on the mat in flawless form, making her 2 teammates look on with serious, pride. The girl introduces herself as Gi Xiaokai, sporting an extremely high speed and agility score that wows the onlookers present. The crowd murmurs in awe, saying those prodigies have a real shot at getting into the competitive martial arts academy. Some guys in the stands remark that the challenger kid looks way too weak next to the champs, appearing to be nothing but skin and bones. Professor Chow simply gives a knowing smile, hearing the talk, knowing full well that looks can be very deceiving. The elder then turns to the young prota with a curious look, asking for the name of today's brave challenger. In a totally relaxed stance, yawning out of pure boredom, the boy casually introduces himself as Chin-en. The three opponents get extremely annoyed by that laid-back attitude, wondering how a skinny kid like that dares challenge them. The elder asks if the young man is truly ready to take on 3 consecutive one-on-one matches against these prodigies. Chin-en lets out a sarcastic grin and replies in a super smug tone that fighting 3 separate times is a total drag. He rolls his neck, casually saying he is pressed for time and has way more important things to take care of later. To everyone's shock, the prota points at the rival trio and tells all 3 of them to come at him at once in the ring. The crowd in the stands begins whispering, calling the boy arrogant and claiming he is just trying to act like a tough guy. The bald member of the trio nearly blows his top. Hearing that, unable to believe the newcomer has the nerve to ask for a 3-on-1 fight, Chin-en keeps the smirk on his face and sharply asks if the dojo's top champions happen to be a little too scared to fight. Next, he looks straight at the opposing master, asking how he feels about making things simple and opening up a full-on brawl. The rival leader, with a wicked smile, says the boy should not play around, since it would be a shame for him to get badly hurt before the exams, faced with so much cheap trash talk and arrogance. Professor Cho merely lets out a long sigh, already anticipating the massive chaos about to unfold. Chin-en smiles and says that getting hurt in the match will be entirely on him, and that everyone present serves as a witness to that. He adds that if all 3 lose together, they will face historic embarrassment, leaving the rivals fuming with rage. The rival dojo master smirks and says that since the boy talks so much trash, he better be ready to deal with the fallout. The villain yells out furiously, ordering his students not to hold back and to beat the prota until he cannot even stand up from the floor.